Thank you. As you all know, this is our third vote, but this is the first time I've been able to be present for the vote on the merits. I was absent from the June 22nd meeting for my mother-in-law's memorial service. And so I did tonight prepare a short presentation that I'd like to run through. I felt like there has been so much discussion, and I have done so much research and spoken to so many people and received so many communications that it would be helpful to collect all of that into one presentation. Also, because there will be at least one other board voting on this matter, I wanted to have in the record just kind of a collection of what I, as a board member, have looked into and learned about the issue. I wanted to start by saying to the Barton Springs lifeguards and cashiers, we've received a lot of emails from different people that use the pool on this issue, and I wish that I could pick out and forward to the staff every email that talks about how much you are appreciated and what you do for our city, that you have a hard job and you do a great job. And wherever people are on this issue, there was a lot of appreciation for the aquatic staff at the pool and the lifeguards. And so I know you guys aren't getting those emails, and I wanted to just make sure that was understood. It's not just that we appreciate you, everybody that uses the pool does. And I also wanted to say thank you so much to everybody that wrote in or came to a meeting. We appreciate the sentiment so much, and even though it's been a long haul, it feels like a little bit of, it's just an endurance race with this, but if you can take time to reach out and share your comments with the Planning Commission, if that meeting goes forward on October 12th, I think that's a really important next step, regardless of how we vote tonight. So with that, we'll just run through the presentation. So I was a little bit confused as to what a conditional use permit is because it has the word permit in it. So I asked some questions of staff and read some of the land codes. So I just wanted to, clarify that it's an allowed use within a zoning designation. So it's not a permit. We're not issuing it to this particular vendor. It's about the actual land that sits there. And so the way I understand it, it's the building and the seating area that will be fenced off, that would be designated as appropriate for alcohol sales within the park. This designation does not expire. And I asked how, if it doesn't work out, because some of the emails said, can we just try it? If it doesn't work out, if it's creating an environment we agree is not comfortable or safe, how do we undo it? So I just asked, how do you undo it? Staff, the response was they're not entirely clear because it's kind of a unique situation. There's not really any precedent. It would be a rezoning probably, and they laid out a process that did not include the Parks and Recreation Board in the process if it goes through that rezoning process. I mean, I'll say they weren't sure, but just so that voting, we don't actually know how we'd undo it. And then I would just say that zoning, we don't really do zoning here. This is a land use designation within zoning. But if you look at the zoning code, it's all about compatibility. What uses of land are compatible with each other? As we all know, we're talking about now a restaurant with beer and alcohol, with the playground, with the children's train, with the pool. We all know that. Did you have a question or something I can help you with?
I thought, wouldn't we control it through a contract outside of that and just be able to have those conditions in the contract for the beer and wine?
I don't know what authority, once the contract is issued,
right,
with the language allowing beer and wine. Right. I'm not at this time aware of what authority the Parks and Recreation Board would have to go in and change that contract. It's a 10-year contract with 2 5-year extensions. So, staff may be able to address that better, but what I'm talking about, because we're not voting on a contract tonight, we're voting on this conditional use permit, which is an allowed use within a zoning designation. So you are correct. There would be a contract with whoever is the vendor on this site, but we're not voting on that tonight. That was, as Director McNeely explained, was addressed in other meetings.
No, and I can appreciate what we're voting on, but if the intent is to be able to restrict the sale of beer and wine in the future, if this was granted, that's what I thought the overall
Yeah, and
question
the way I
was.
think about these things is if I'm not on this board, what would the procedure be? What would be happening? How would this take place? And I wanted to know more about what I'm voting on tonight. I wasn't on the board when the contract was voted on, but we'll get to that. But I wanted to know what this is really, because it's an unusual thing.
Well,
So this is what I looked into.
You're on the board when the contract has.
No,
so-
September of 2019, I was
Which when
not.
we signed a
Thank you.
contract? Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to continue. I don't want to take up any more time than I have to. Can you, next slide, please? We've heard a lot about safety, so I won't add to it. Thank you so much to everybody that came and taught us more about what it's like to be a lifeguard at Barton Springs. I will add, there's a video on YouTube that Karen Coker made where she interviewed some lifeguards, and they talk about their day. They talk about their training, and it is really a wonderful educational video. I encourage you all to take a look at that. As far as people that are opposed to this because of the risk from drowning, we did also hear from Alyssa Magram, who is the executive director of Collins Hope, and that is our premier local water safety and anti-drowning organization. And she talked about, again, the risks of adults watching their children under the influence of alcohol is a real risk for those children. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is more about the process as far as I've researched it. There's a typo right there. So the cafe's been there for about 60 years. I haven't found any evidence of beer and wine being served there before that at any time in its history. So this is, a change from an extended history. The PARD presentation that was given on June 26 talked about that PARD's intention was that this be a destination, not only a convenience to park users, but a destination. And, I think that for me was, as I spoke about at the other meeting, kind of set off these light bulbs, but we're doing a master plan, we're doing a vision plan for Zilker Park. If not only a convenience, not only to park users, but a destination means this is not just to serve food to people that have been swimming. I'm sorry, to serve beer and wine to people that have been swimming or using the park, that we're encouraging them to come there just for the purpose of going to the cafe. And to me, I'm not saying if there's anything right or wrong with that. I'm saying let's deal with that in the vision plan, because we're talking so much about uses and what people want, and it's the perfect time to be talking about that. To the contrary, the community meetings I've attended about the vision plan have a specific disclaimer at the beginning that say, do not talk about this. I also looked at the community survey that was referenced in the previous PARD presentation. There was one open-ended question that said, what would you like to be available at the Zilker Cafe? Which I thought it was great. They did an open-ended question and let people make their own suggestions. I got similar statistics to Heidi, who spoke earlier. I counted 425 people responded. 20 of those, or 4.7%, mentioned beer and wine, or wine. 95% didn't mention beer and wine. And it said on the department presentation earlier, requests for beer garden, and that was 2 out of 425 people mentioned that. 30% of the responses did mention fresh juice, and mostly because they want to have a juice land or smoothies there. So I just wanted to be real clear about the community survey and input that has been cited that was taken. Because, and I did all this as research because I'm trying to sort through it all. And then, as you all know, we've gotten a lot of emails. I was trying to count. It got mixed up between the 3 meetings, but and this number's old, but I'd say I've personally gotten more than 200 against and 6 in favor. And a lot of those are individual emails written, not form letters, and they are very compelling. There's some really, people put their heart into those communications. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so I have a lot of respect for who the board members were before me and the decisions that were made, and I don't come in here trying to just undo things willy-nilly, and so I really wanted to understand what had gone on. I listened to the recordings of the April 9th, 2019 Contracts and Concessions Committee meeting. In that meeting, the staff said that they needed to get clarification as to alcohol, and there was research into the alcohol in parks policy that they did not know if alcohol would be allowed. The September 10th Contracts and Concessions Committee meeting, the issue of alcohol was not raised or discussed at all. The September 24th, 2019 Parks and Recreation meeting, the issue of alcohol was not raised or discussed at all. The City Council meeting on October 3rd was on the consent agenda. No questions, no discussion, nothing. The one mention of alcohol you could have found was on October 3rd on the City Council agenda. If you went 3 links into the backup, you would have got to the scope of work, which has the paragraph stating the director may decide that there could be alcohol there. So, just if there was other discussion about it, other meetings, I know there was the RFP vendor meetings where they took feedback from the vendors. There's no public record of those. I don't have that research. So I also wanted to say that the idea that we're going to put a 6-foot fence around this area in the middle of this, that gravel courtyard in front of the pool, that was not discussed. The only thing that happened was at that April 9th contracts meeting, they said, will they be allowed to make any changes to the area in front of the cafe other than providing tables? And the answer was no. So no discussion of fencing at any of those meetings. And the fencing is a real issue. To me, it's like at the last meeting, we were talking about maybe some planters, some way to divide it. And now we're talking about a 6-foot non-climbable fence, which I think is the same black fence that goes around the pool currently. And that is, for me, a real problem would be, I get that it's not to keep the public out. It's just aesthetically, it's just welcoming. It seems like the wrong thing in this spot. And if we don't serve alcohol and beer, we don't have to do it. We can have a courtyard with tables where people can walk by and talk to each other. You can let your kids run around that area. In terms of the revenue estimates, no one's really talking about it. The math that I've done based on the information, it's like a pretty negligible amount of money that would come to the city, whether or not we do alcohol. And it seems like I can't even understand why we would go through all of this with so much vocal community opposition for the amount of money that I think is possible. So in the first meeting, can you go to the next slide, please? In the June 22nd meeting, a lot of the community input was about sitting at the cafe while your kids are at the playground and how nice it is to go to Central Market or Hat Creek or some of those places where that's available. I was curious about that, and I did visit, and walked it out myself, and there's absolutely no visibility to the playground from the cafe seating area. It's just not an option. Other restricting factors are that the play school, the structure there is actually designed for kids aged 2 to 5 years old, and that's what it says on the sign at the park. This sign is from the fire truck. Obviously, you need to be supervised by an adult. So, I would think from the cafe to the playground, I'm thinking an 11 or a 12-year-old could be over there by themselves, and they're too old for this play structure. Also, there's a lot of traffic on that path of people coming to and from that area below the dam, and all of the things they bring with them, maybe finishing off some beers before they leave. So it's not a safe area for children to be by themselves. Also I'm also thinking, there's no fence around that playground when it's not under construction, and there's open water right there at Barton Creek. So I would hate for us to vote on something and encourage people to be sitting in an area where they can't see their kids, and there's all of these risks. Finally, I found the Alta's Cafe not to be an applicable comparison. Obviously, there's no swimming allowed in Lady Bird Lake, so the drowning factor is not there. And also, if you're coming or going from there, you're on a boat or a stand-up paddleboard, all of which float. I mean, we're talking about people swimming in a pool that has safety risks. Board Member De Palma, as far as us talking, the discussion about the safety in the pool, I think what I heard one of the speakers say is Barton Springs is wild and natural, and that's part of what's amazing about it. And I don't think we're here saying it's too dangerous for swimming. I think what we're saying is our staff is doing is the best they can. Let's not add any more dangers to what is a natural swimming area.
And just to reiterate, I'm saying I'm not saying don't swim at Barton Springs anymore, right? I said if it is the amount of folks swimming that creates the hazard, which is what the data shows, not being able to see the bottom, having too compact, then let's look at the amount of folks we let in through the gate based upon the evidence from past drownings.
Okay. It's definitely a discussion for another day. So I wanted to, and then I just was thinking about some examples. P. Terry's, Juice Land, Casa de Luz, all places that are alcohol-free, successfully owned, locally owned restaurants, very close to the pool. P. Terry's is probably the de facto concession stand for the past 5 years while the cafe's been closed. Finally, I don't think the conditional use permit is compatible with the existing uses. As mentioned, the alcohol and drug use below the dam is just really getting intense. It's kind of, you have to evaluate whether or not your little kids should be in the deep end of the pool side right now because there's so much wafting and also just in the open alcohol use. And I don't think that allowing alcohol in one area but not in others close by the pool, I just think it's confusing and is going to further discourage compliance with the rules when we're having significant issues right now with compliance. And then, it's just the sentiment in the emails. There's so many references. I wish I knew how to do that word cloud thing. So many references to nature, kids, recreation, healthy family activity, physical training, peacefulness. And while I get that people are making examples to other parks that serve alcohol, or we voted on one recently, I think what I read is we're being asked to recognize the uniqueness of this area and the way this area is used in a different way than some of the other parks and locations. And I would like it if the Parks Board would, think about it that way instead of comparing it to, say, a park in a different part of town that doesn't have the same features and existing uses nearby. So we can enhance a welcoming and family-friendly atmosphere by keeping this cafe alcohol-free. I also just wanted to address, this is such an interesting issue to me. There's a lot of people who are opposed to this CUP that I regularly meet somewhere outside for a beer or wine. Yet, as somebody said, none of us ever have thought that this would be the place to do that. So I really look forward to using this cafe and having the healthy food options and having I think it's so exciting to have this new place to meet after a swim, to get a snack and to visit with old friends and new friends and to welcome more people that aren't currently coming. And I think we can do that in an alcohol-free environment. Thank you all so much for letting me do this presentation and for your time.
No, thank you for putting together the presentation and all your research on that, Board Member Faust. We appreciate it.